Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Lead Score Monday. I'm Casey Hawkins here with Chris Carolan and Rylee Powell. Looks like my LinkedIn is having trouble connecting, but Chris's, yours is working. So
Awesome.
we'll just do our best with what we got. Rylee, welcome back. You were out sick last week.
I'm alive.
Yes, but you made it back. We're glad you're here. We're glad to have you. Before we dive into today's topic, I thought we could spend a little bit of time catching you up on where, like we talked about last week, because I think that sets up our when conversation perfectly. Last week, Chris and I tackled the transition problem. You know how nobody outside of RevOps actually understands what a lead score of 73 means?
Yep.
We talked about turning those meaningless numbers into human readable context, labels like high fit researcher showing consistent engagement. Oh, and Rylee left. So we're really doing well today. This is
Very sorry about that.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
Researcher.
Woo. So we're turning the numbers into readable context, like labels, and then custom views that surface the right people at the right time, and custom cards, which really complete the context. The whole point was scores as numbers are useless, but scores with context are powerful. But you need that transition layer to make them useful. So I wanted to show you kind of what we built because I think it was kind of fun and cool. I feel like I have always kind of underutilized cards inside of HubSpot. It's just never been something I've leaned into as much as I should have. So Chris and I ended up last week creating a tab here for specifically scoring. And we made a card that shows the lead scores, which is kind of nice because you can go in and you can see the score history. And then we also kind of started to add some details here. So we were looking at like what, let me share a different one that's actually associated with a company. But what is actually like making up those scores is kind of what we're able to see in here. All right, great. So this person has a company score of 5. The score in this portal is made up of industry, revenue, associated contacts, deals, employees, and country and region. So now I can see there's a score of 5, and right under it, I'm able to see like what is part of the company record that's being scored, which just adds a layer of visibility here that we otherwise otherwise you're just looking at a score of 5. And I can go in here and I can see what's changed, which I like. And I think this is a nice addition.
I've
with the new
loved
score.
that. Yeah, that's been amazing since they implemented that.
But it doesn't tell me what actually like changed. Like I can see a score of 2, but I can't see like why it's a score of 2 versus too much. When I have this right here, I can see like, okay, yeah, they have a score of 5 because we're targeting SaaS or whatever. The other benefit that I know Chris and I talked about with this view is it gives you the ability to like update things very like naturally.
Yeah. If
like
you want them updatable.
Correct. Yeah. Like total revenue here seems.
If you want them updatable. If you want to give your team the power to keep their shit together, instead of relying on the rest of the world to keep it clean for them.
Yeah, well,
this is a quick path to doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is kind of where we landed last week when we talk about where we should be lead scoring. Really, we were looking at, how to give the team visibility into the lead score in a much more natural way.
Yeah, I think huge improvement.
Yeah. So Rylee, knowing that you've built some scores in your day. What's your take on the transition challenge? I think you've built enough scoring models to know that they work, when they work and when they're just creating confusion. Would this solve in some of the use cases you've seen?
Yeah. And I actually think I end up usually making segments or something that this helps alleviate is like, if you have things that you know should be scoring higher, but aren't, you create like segments for just missing data where this should be scored higher, but like we're missing industry. So like there's 20 points that this is missing out on because industry is null or something like that. So like at some kind of, admin level, some way of being able to identify like, hey, what are the ones that are being scored correctly because they have all known values versus the ones that are like not being scored to their potential because they just have unknown values. And that's what I actually mean by like updatable, where if you want, I don't necessarily think I want a rep coming in and changing the industry value from SaaS to like something else. There's certain values that like should have a high degree of governance around them. And so something, in that regard, was kind of what I had in mind. But as far as the transition, I've always found like it's usually been some document that it's like this handoff thing that people can see like, hey, here's what's impacting lead scoring and here's what's not. But this is actually a really, really good visibility manner of being able to show like, all right, this is why this is kind of scoring up and down. I think this helps a lot with making sure that there's an understanding of these are the things that are impacting lead scoring. I would love if eventually there was some way that you could embed like a lead score card here that showed like the change or the impact that each of these properties was having to the lead score. Because I think that would be the real user empowered thing of letting a user be able to look at this and say like, oh, SaaS is giving it 30 points. And then at any point a rep could be like, hey, that's actually giving it too many points or something like that. Or they could kind of have an idea or have a thought that can kind of help improve the score. But
yeah, just when I was showing this to you, I was thinking like, I feel like in a perfect world, it would be nice if there was like either one of these little pop out things that said like that we could customize and say like, this is the result. Or there was just like a little, spot to add something underneath that's like, industries points are allocated like this, whatever.
Yeah, I've always wished there was like some like accounting T-sheet I could embed that's like, here's your debits and here's your credits and here's how much they're going up and down.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, this scoring history feels like a step there.
It's in the right direction, but it's not broken out in my mind in the ideal
it's
manner.
not even really telling me. I mean, I don't even know which of these caused the 2+ change.
Yeah.
This is just like these things could have.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Rylee.
Yo.
In this world where you get to add what you want and somebody says, oh, SaaS shouldn't impact that much. Who's doing that and how are they taking action on that thought?
So in my mind, a lot of times it's kind of the reps, and ideally before you've done this and created your lead score, you've consulted the reps and have their opinion in this, like that you have gone through with your team and been like, okay, which ones, like let's stack rank the industries and distribute points accordingly. But in that example, it's kind of just like, oh, someone new is starting, or just time has shifted priorities where they're like, actually, this is not really like, it's just in their face. And when they see it, they can have a thought that's like, oh, things have changed, because they're in here looking at each individual record way more frequently than an admin or like a RevOps person actually is. So
Mhm.
them
Yes.
being the person that can actually indicate like, hey, actually, you know, there was a new regulation that changed how SaaS is a viable fit for us or not. Like just having it to where it can stir a thought that they think to flag up to someone to make a change would be super helpful, because the managing of lead scoring through time is always the most complicated thing of as your company changes or as, you know, the world changes or industries change, like the point allocations kind of should go up and down to reflect that.
Yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, an ideal world. In the world where 98% of like lead scoring sucks, I think a lot of that has to do with this like blind, like a handoff of the baton instead of like a collaboration on what is happening,
Yeah.
right? And just the ability to create some context here around the scores, I think by itself can create that situation where it's like, oh, I have thoughts now. I actually see
Yeah.
before I get on the call and realize that this is not a fit and then get upset and then complain about marketing. Instead, like every meeting now can be that much more valuable
Yeah.
because we can just pull up a record and say, hey, does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And in those moments, like there's so much training and enablement that can happen where like everybody in the room is like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So when you see it next time, like this is the change that you're
Yeah.
making. And like you said, the frontline reps are the ones inside of the records more than anybody else. And if we can enable them to make changes, last week I had a great episode with Zach Hushin, and we started playing with um, the data agent properties related to industry specifically, right? Because we know how problematic that field can be
Yep.
in terms of so much out of our control in terms of how companies label themselves on
Or what
LinkedIn,
data
or
are we
via
using?
taxes, or which database,
ISO codes. Yeah.
right? And he created very easily something that would just go look at the website and classify based on the internal designation, because a lot of companies have internal ways that they talk about different target markets,
Yeah.
and just the ability to put that here. And if we can enable teams to say like, okay, this has happened like 5 times in a row, let me just create a proof of concept property real quick to see if there's something happening here. Then the next time we meet with the team, we bring it up. I think there's so much potential here.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, getting your end users continuous feedback on like their ability to make changes to this is paramount to its success. Like if you have someone for like, if you have your team for 3 months log in and see SaaS is still giving 50 points when things have changed and it needs to give less points, like that deteriorates their faith in the entire system. So like for it to maintain its relevancy and importance, you need to be inputting in these observations that your team has of like, actually that it doesn't matter in these instances. Then you need to go make sure the score reflects that, so that when they can see the score, that they actually have a high degree of faith and confidence in like, okay, this does reflect, you know, what this should be.
I think that sets us up to start talking a little bit more about the when today. This isn't actually where I intended to start with when, but we're flexible. Um, so when we talk about when to lead score, there's a few different lenses we can look at. And we'll see how many we get through. Some is about like when to decay, when should scores trigger actions, when to the scores become misleading. But I think the when we can start with, based on this conversation, is when should you recalibrate your model? Because, and I mentioned this on the morning show, I've said this 1,000 times probably on different lives and meetings, but most commonly, people adjust their lead scores because a new head of marketing, a new head of sales comes, and they decide, whoop, we should do this now.
No, it's always like a set it and forget it thing that people do. And I think, it should be this, let's talk about where people currently are. Because I think in the real ideal future state, AI is doing this in real time every day based off of different changing things. But most people aren't there right now. And it might take a while before that can actually be a thing. But that's the ideal end state, is that you've kind of built your lead scoring in a way so that AI is able to make these changes in real time. Right now, I think, ideally most people should have some routine cadence where they go in and say like, all right, for, a day every 3 months or 6 months, we're going to pop the hood and assess everything. And you kind of collect some information from your team beforehand and do that. But also what needs to happen is people should be able to flag at any point, hey, this needs to be adjusted, this needs to be changed. And you need to have a pretty reflexive motion about being able to go and implement those in. You need to be able to identify okay, what you requested is kind of a foundational shift. So we're going to just set that aside for this, 6-month check-in versus oh, you just need a quick point adjustment or something like that. Then let's go in and change that kind of immediately and in real time. I don't necessarily think, you need to just let stuff sit on the back burner and continue having wrong scores perpetually.
Yeah. I think I like that. I like the idea of being able to flag it. However, I think that visibility of what is included in the score is really important to get people to flag it, because it's very hard for whoever's setting up the scores. If you just say, hey, this person scored 100, I don't think they should have. That's I don't know what to do with that. I mean, in reality, I'm going to be like, okay, just ignore that one, or why?
Yeah,
or
I'm going to immediately ask questions. There's no conversation. There's no world in that dialogue that I don't ask why.
Yeah, but I think it's so much easier. It's so much more direct to start making those changes if there is a way to say hey, I saw they got a score of 5 for their industry being SaaS. That doesn't make sense. I've never closed a SaaS deal in my whole time working here, or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, having a way for them to flag that is great, but they have to know in order to flag.
Yeah, your end users have to be able to back up their opinion. It can't just be this flippant thing of I just feel like we're not really making any progress there. Okay, well, show me some data that says why SaaS companies are not, making any movement, and then we'll make that reflected. But it needs to have that, kind of backing to a certain extent. I also think just something, as soon as I said it, I wanted to caveat it with there's this post new score launch phase that I think things should be changed and iterated quickly, where it's we just push out a new score, and if someone sees something, they should say something, and then we should make it change. And then you get to this point of things have stabilized a little bit. And at that point, you really want to limit how frequently you are changing the lead scoring, because if you then start looking at data over time for the last year, and you start seeing scores just kind of jump all over the place, and for this purpose, we'll talk about fit scores, because in theory, those are a little bit more static. You kind of, the value becomes known and it stays known because companies aren't changing industry like that. And unless you're documenting every version 1 of the lead score, version 1.1, version 1.2, version 1.3, version 1.4, and then can bracket that out over the score history, it's so difficult to be able to then look back and understand why a score ever was what it was. So you want to get to a point where you're adjusting the actual scoring mechanism at routine intervals, and then keeping track of what the scores are, whether it's every month or every 3 months, where you're okay, today we're going to go and we're going to implement these 7 changes, and then we're going to have like a month of running without any changes so that we can kind of see how things get distributed out and kind of run the experiment. So, you know, you want to be flexible and adaptive, especially in that post-launch, like, all right, we've just pushed the score out. But after it's run for a little bit, you really want to get to a point where you're like, all right, we have to let the score be the score and let things take place downstream, and then get some data and like assess what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I typically say, like, so I'm building a score for a client right now. I'm almost done building it. So I'm working on getting a meeting scheduled with someone on there, like, who will get delivered these scores. So one of their BDRs in this case. I'm working on setting up a time to meet with them this week so that I can say, okay, here are some high scores. Do these excite you, or do these not, basically? And then this is a weird time because we're going into the holidays, but in theory, I would like to like launch it, meet back like the next week, say, okay, how'd it go? And then maybe like almost like a 7-day check-in, a 30-day check-in, and then like a 60-day check-in, and let that kind of be the normalization while keeping an open dialogue of, you know, if you see something, let me know. But then after that, I tend to tell people, ideally once a quarter, you should be having a meeting reviewing the scores with the full team experiencing the scores, basically, whoever's building it and whoever's receiving the scores. And then if that's not possible for whatever reason, like every 6 months, I think is typically what I say is like my minimum in when we should be reviewing.
And just something to call out while you kind of brought up that, I think having that where you review the scores every 3 months is ideal. 6 months is also fine. But a great place to start, if you're trying to set that up and work on that, is review the anomalies. So look at the things that are exceptionally high fits that are just junk or not trash. Like, okay, in theory, all of your exceptionally high fits should have been assigned to someone and something should have started moving. Well, which one of those are bad or junk or things that they shouldn't have been high fits? And then can you take anything about them and implement into the scoring that it would have reduced them from being exceptionally high fits? If it's, you know, they're using a competitor, no, they're still exceptionally high fits. Like, you shouldn't reduce that. But if it's like, well, they, you know, it's SaaS, but it's SaaS and it only has 2 employees. So those should actually be substantially lower than SaaS with 100 employees or something like that. And then inversely, take your, you know, companies that have had really low fits, like really low fit scores, and have progressed well. And you're like, oh shit, that should have been a higher fit, and it wasn't. So when you're doing your review, looking at the anomalies is like a really great place to get started.
Obviously, another, like, just before we move on to some of the other win conversations, is like, if you're offering changes, I have a client who just added a new kind of product to their product line. So that meant we were relooking at the scores, because now all of a sudden there are businesses that previously they didn't have an offer for that now they do. I think that one, like, they came to me and they were like, hello, Casey, we have a new product. We need to redo our scores. But just, you know, making sure that's included in your, as that happens. But that can sometimes be a natural reason to reassess scores. If you find yourself not looking at your score for a year or two, and then you relaunch a product, it's also worth relooking at all the other stuff that you're scoring.
For sure.
You mentioned something at the beginning of this section, Rylee, that eventually AI is doing this. I forget the words exactly, but we're not there yet, or it's not ready yet, or something like that. In your opinion, what is in the way of that right now?
Yeah, I'm limited in my understanding in like the technical capability of if that can actually happen or not. Like, let's say that, well, I'll just flip it. What's in the way of that is that that's not where people currently are. Like, I think most people, if they're listening to this, are in this kind of very manual lead scoring thing, or they don't have one, or it's in this kind of really weird like construction zone stage. Getting them to like go from there straight to like AI is just doing it in perfection automatically, I think is too drastic of a leap for a lot of people. And that's kind of gated by like, well, I don't actually know how you would do that, like from a technical perspective. I know, you could probably build some level of agent that can like, you could run something every day. Like, I don't exactly know how I would configure that, I guess. So it's a little bit of my own technical limitation of the art of the possible. But then I think it's also just meeting people where they are, and then realizing most people aren't going to just be ready to like jump straight into that. The people that are, I think you should, as long as it's technically possible.
Yeah, I agree with Rylee.
Well, it's technically possible, like for sure. We already have tools, not even the agents, even if just setting up the views in the way that we are can enable humans to make decisions on a much, much more consistent time scale than what we're describing right now.
So
right?
just from what I'm saying, fully automated with AI, I'm meaning like no one ever has to do anything.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be there. Like, that's the thing. Like, all those people who aren't ready to jump also suck at this.
Right.
And they've never been good. And whatever you give to AI right now, it's going to be better than you. And
well, so I definitely think everyone should be using AI to make the decisions for what should be built in the score. But like, to me, unless you're using this amazing prompt through some Comet browser or something, there's nothing that someone wouldn't have to go click into lead scoring, click this property value, click a point value next to it. Like, so that's what I mean by fully automated, that like no one has to actually do anything in terms of setting it up or configuring it or adjusting it. I think regardless, everyone should be using AI to like do the data assessment of like which should we be giving points to and which shouldn't we.
right.
But I'm just not aware of anything that's like, okay, I just turn this on and then I never actually have to open up lead scoring ever again, that it's being updated every day based off of real-time activity.
Which is a huge leap. And thankfully, we don't have to go that far.
Okay.
Because what you just described with using AI to do the data analysis, like what you guys were describing, these 3 and 6 month timescales, and how you have to do it in a very structured way for it to be meaningful and actually make like meaningful change. Like, that's correct. Right. But that's also the part that takes so damn long that humans just don't have to do anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think the reason that those were so long out was because it was such a process to do. So it was like, okay, like this, I can't do this weekly or monthly because I would never get anything else done. But now, like, hell, weekly, you could just go in and review every company that's become a new opportunity and every company that's become a customer and ask AI, what impact should this have on my existing deal or on my existing scoring? And it'll just run through, okay, well, you had 10 new deals created with these types of companies and they were all of this certain type. So actually you should give a little bit more points to these things because you're just seeing more motion here. So like, to your point, actually, I could kind of am adopting the argument and belief that now that as long as you get comfortable with what your prompt structure should be and like how you're actually setting this up to be routine, to where you can kind of go in and through 4 or 5 templated prompts be able to like have it assess your data and move information over into your lead scoring, that definitely could be done in real time.
Yeah. And even there, like,
because you have to print out like this whole report and start doing okay, which ones are the same, which ones are different. But now like you just ask Breeze Assistant, review all my new recent deals and like let me know the similarities between the companies, and then you're done.
Right. And even the situation we described earlier, where it's like, hey, Breeze, I don't know if SAS should be impacting the score this much. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like things like that. And that's where it's 100% mindset. If, and this is where I like challenging the audience. You might be in that place that Rylee was describing. But if you have HubSpot and you are paying for professional level HubSpot, you are actually in the place
Yeah.
where you already have access to tools that can help you. And you just have to make the decision to say, oh, we don't have to do reporting like to the heavens before we can even look at anything. We've got AI. And if we get into this cadence of every time, because Breeze is going to learn real quick, if every time your rep or your marketer or whoever's involved in this process can just note, oh, this one hit, this one's good, or oh, this one doesn't feel right. Like it's going to learn over time. And if you start to do that as a team, you'll very quickly get to this point where you're doing this scoring just so much better than you have in the past.
Yeah. And it really locks you in to that, like you just own it better because you're thinking about it more frequently. The biggest problem with the 3 month and the 6 month like routine check-in was always like, I almost need to take a day to like get back into that frame of mind of like, oh, okay, what is this? What's going on? Like, so just being able to, for it to be something that you kind of always keep, you know, not on the back burner, but not front of mind of just like, okay, let me just do my Friday quick check-in, see what's going on. Any big changes that should be impacting lead scoring? No. Okay. Like it helps. You feel like you can keep your arms around it a lot easier.
Yeah.
All right. So does everyone feel like we've covered when you should revisit lead scoring, which is ideally all the time?
Yeah. So like minimum threshold twice a year. Every 6 months, like go in, look at it.
God, I hate that advice. That's just not real for right now.
Well, it's meant like
Right?
But optimum threshold is freaking weekly or monthly. Talk to your chatbot, like, and
I hear you, Chris, but I still think the amount of people that are gonna go in, even if they have their teams marking good leads, the amount of people who are actually gonna go in, to Rylee's point, like this is not fully automated to the point right now where it's just happening in the background. So think on a weekly basis, going into Breeze and saying, hey, what adjustment should I make to my lead score based on the leads this week that were marked and the closed won deals? I don't think there's very many people that are going to do that weekly right now.
Well, and I think foundationally, like even if you're doing that weekly, you need the 6 months. Like we're going to have a big, long discussion. So like at the minimum, like at the foundation level, you set up 2 6-month things that you just put on your, like everyone's calendar that needs to be involved in that discussion. And then ideally you as an individual, as an admin or as a marketing ops or person, like you are going in weekly and kind of putting your thoughts and finesses and touches on it. But that doesn't preclude that you have this 6 months check-in. Like that, all right, like you don't want a bunch of small conversations to prevent you from having a big, deep philosophical conversation every 6 months.
Yeah. And I mean, this is why Value First is about transformation and not optimization. Like it's going to be very hard to take an optimization path to get to real time.
Yeah.
Right. And and what that means is like, even the weekly, like, of course, like if you told me I had to show up once a week and think about stuff that happened throughout, like, no. But if you let me and create the space for me to, in the moment, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right. Hey, Breeze, this doesn't look right. And then move on.
Yeah.
Like that's actually going to be able to happen because people feel it and they want to act on it. Right. So it's actually much more realistic than going like to weekly. Right. But it's a massive mindset shift. Right.
Yeah.
To where you set up, and even these quarterly half-year sessions, like they turn into something completely different than what you're used to. So I think it's like you mentioned, like the prompt. That's why I struggle with the prompting idea, because it's like, oh, if you are going to look at a big batch of stuff, then the prompt does have to be very good. But if you can enable your team to take like even small changes, just small feelings, like there we say vibes,
Yeah.
right? To use that and just start to gather data and help AI learn, like it'll blow your mind at some point,
Yeah.
right? And that's where HubSpot. I was talking to uh, Maggie from Custom Events on Friday. And it's like literally you are getting peppered with data constantly in HubSpot right now. And all of that could lead to scores or like health indices of some sort. And it's not going to, as long as we have this, you know, um, this traditional mindset of how to approach these things. So I invite anyone to challenge themselves to say, like, that's for whether it's a note, whether it is just, mentioning it to Breeze kind of offhand. I think the first part is the habit of just saying something out loud. This doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Instead of like, because people don't do that when they think that the voice is not going to be heard or it's not going to have an impact, right?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, what would happen is like, rep A sees like, I don't think SAS should be giving this many points, and ask Breeze, and Breeze comes up, have a quick chat with it. And then that all of those get stored somewhere to be discussed. Like maybe we don't make the change live, but it's like, oh, here's all the observations from this week that then your admin or your sales enablement guy can kind of go or girl go through and be like, all right, here's all the things that came up. Yes, we're going to make this change. No, this change actually isn't right. Like, because there's things where they're doing it at like a data by data, like a record by record level. A lot of times you will just be too zoomed in and be like, well, it's not really in capturing kind of the whole philosophy of it. But being able for like, if you could orient HubSpot to like just log that as a ticket and assign it to your admin or something that they look at on a weekly basis, or that you bring up on your monthly or quarterly review, like that would be optimal. Because to your point, people in real time will always see and feel things in a clearer way than like if you just try and do it even in some weekly cadence. Because I hear you on that.
Okay. We have 15 minutes left. I do want to like get into some of the other when questions.
Yeah.
The biggest and like foundational one I feel like is looking at like when should your scores be decaying. This specific question is in regards to like engagement scores. I don't know of a way off the top of my head, but interested if Rylee, you have done this at all. But like, there's not a way to decay a property like a fit score. And what I mean by that is like, what if their job title was updated 5 years ago? How reliable is that job title field still?
Right. Yeah.
I don't think we have a way right now to like decay that. So just
Not in the standard decay. And just to like quickly define decay for everybody, if you're listening to this, you don't know what that is. It's I'd say predominantly used for like engagement things where like an action has taken place, that someone has performed an activity. And let's say they looked at your pricing page today, that gives them 50 points. In 2 weeks, it decays down to 30 points. And then in 4 weeks, it decays down to 10 points until, 5 weeks from now, it is eventually giving no points that they ever looked at your pricing page.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point just being timeliness and relevancy of like when an action was taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And then to your point, for the most part, fits don't need a decay, except when you're trying to like assess just, has things been static for way too long and we can't even really trust that this was viable.
And there's things like industry, for example, that are unlikely to change. Like
Right.
industry of a company is unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely to
And
change.
unlikely to be less reliable as time passes.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if an industry was manufacturing 10 years ago, it's very, very likely that industry is manufacturing right now. Where on the contact level, so the company level of things with fit don't really change a lot over time. The contact level likely do. If you look at like job seniority or job title, like if someone has the same job title today that they did 10 years ago, you should look at that with a little less confidence. Like, so I think usually what I actually do is build something in that is like last enrichment date greater than whatever, last date of email validation result. Like if their email hasn't been validated through like a zero bounce or never bounce or something like that in the last year, then we kind of start detracting points. So it's not necessarily like a decay as it is just like you start subtracting points for markers that just show that we're not confident that this record's accuracy is where it needs to be.
And how do you feel, Rylee, about decay versus time frame?
I use time frame. I don't like decay. I don't
I
like
use time frame too. But I didn't want to like, if
idea,
you were like solid on decay, I wasn't gonna like.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea, but I think there's the fact that it's a global thing. I don't, I guess it's, per group. So if you go just crazy with infinite groups, then you can start to add in some things. But I think if you toggle that on, I think the options that it gives you, the lowest one is like 1 month. No, I want days in this. Like that to me is where you're really getting your value. Like if someone did something 2 days ago and then it decays, that's what it should be doing. The fact that it's the month is the smallest interval is too big of an interval. I use time frame on pretty much everything. And for the most part, I use like 7 days. Like
I do too. I do the 7 days as well. My other beef with decay is this is misleading. It says it will reduce 100% every 1 month, but here in the like tooltip thing, it says each event's score will decay on its own timeline starting from when the event first occurred. So it'll decay 100% every month, but it will start decaying from like the day after, which makes sense, but is very confusing. And that's actually my biggest issue with decay is I think a rep looks at a score that has been decayed and it's very unclear how the points have been allocated.
Yeah. Now what I think, I haven't done this before, but like I think you'll get a clearer picture if you look at the lead scoring card if you have decay on, because it will tell you that it's decayed, where if you use time frame, the points just disappear. So like I wish that was in that higher level thing, but I mean, let's say you have this scoring group that has like 5 or 6 different actions in there. Is it decaying the whole group score based on the most recent action date? Like there's just too many unknowns for me to like ever feel like I could really trust this and like build on it. So I've always used time frame. And I use time frame, I kind of build in a little weird nuance, like say it's number of page views is 1. I'll put that on there like a few times and decay each instance a little differently. So that like if they view 10 pages, they get number of page views is like 1, as like let's say each one gives 5 points. If they did that 5 days ago, they might be getting 3 of those points, 3 of those 5, but not all 5 of those 5.
But you would do that all with time frame. So you would say like,
so I would just add in more events and then add in time frame.
Day. Yeah. And then like,
I would do that in the last 2 days, and then in the last 3 days, and in the last 4 days. And like that's how you can kind of build in some of that escalation within a decay framework.
So if I did it like this, I see, yeah. They would get like 3 points if they did it in
The
the last
day they
1
did
day.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of this, like, it seems wild when you build it out just because you end up scrolling and it's so big and long, but like it really shows a very strong engagement score because day by day, people are kind of going up and down based off of the actions that are actually occurring. And I usually try and build in, we talk about lead scoring as like the main thing you're trying to accomplish is deploy resources. Like
Mhm.
when we send a lead over, it's like, look, this is very, very recent and relevant, like right now. And the
Uh-huh.
minute it drops down, like you should have performed some action or some activity in that time.
Mhm.
And then you can kind of start to see where activity succeeds or fails based off of high or low scores.
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer in decay. Like it is lead scoring without some level of decay or changing over time, like
Mhm.
decreasing over time. I think a lot of people initially, when they first build a lead score, don't include this in, and they just
Mhm.
view it as like amassing points with them never decreasing, unless like you get a known undesirable, meaning like if they go to your careers page and you subtract points. No, you need to reduce given points based off of time frame of a win and not
Mhm.
just subtract points based off of known undesirable data.
Mhm. And Chris, I know you're a big believer in recency. Like, why are Rylee and I making these weird things just to prioritize that recency? Like, I hear from teams a lot who are like, "Well, our sales cycle is um a year long or 6 months long. So we need to include everyone that's done anything in the last 6 months."
Yeah. Problem starts with our sales cycle, right? Has nothing to do with the buyer journey.
Yeah.
I'll say the one time it does, there's probably more than one, but even here, it just takes a little bit of innovation to think outside of the regular purchasing cycle. So
Mhm,
like in government, if government is a target,
mhm,
like there is a specific budget period that they usually spend money at the
mhm,
end of. But sometimes it's because it's such an arduous process where if you somehow make that an easier process, they might buy it like at any time of year,
mhm,
right? And so the moment that you do this stuff like based on your process is when you're it's getting harder and harder for that to be
Yeah.
um, for that to create any value because timing and relevance is everything. And that's where even with these like trying to control the um, the contextual importance of what just happened, like outside of the context of everything else that's happening,
mhm,
it's just getting harder and harder. And that's where you could have these like decaying, but then we might get like research or buyer intent signals coming in that they posted an article. They do a bunch of other stuff that we have decided not to measure or we didn't know we could measure or whatever
mhm,
that says no, they're still like live. They're just not going to keep hitting your website every day in this
mhm,
case, or they're not going to keep downloading the thing, or they're not going to do all the traditional things, which is maybe send some emails or respond to you or whatever it used to
mhm,
be, right? This might you've seen people where they like consume a piece of content and then they won't shut up about it on LinkedIn,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And most I would imagine most of those companies are not tracking that kind of information, right?
mhm,
Meanwhile, it's like sending signals left and right that this should be like score over 9,000 and nobody's reaching out to this person.
mhm.
And uh, so context.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like, okay, well, your sales cycle might be 6 months long, but the person is doing something right now. So if the purpose of your score is to deploy resources, then you should be deploying resources when they're showing some signal.
Yeah. Like your lead score should be so built on the buying journey and what they're doing and totally forget your internal process. Like the whole point is you deploy a resource or you do a thing whenever a certain threshold is met. And then if the next day they drop back below that threshold, it doesn't matter. Who cares? You should have done the thing when they hit your mark. And then there's downstream kind of play going from there. Like you don't need to retain their score, like keep their score a certain level over time I don't even know why you would do that.
Someone can
know that exists is like, well, I want to be able to report on how many people were like, how many people met this score threshold in this period of time because of reporting reasons. And like, you can work around that without building it into the scoring model. Like you can date stamp and you can kind of stamp a bunch of tiers and thresholds and stuff for reporting. But like, if your sales cycle 6 months, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, someone can close today and have a engagement score of 0 because if your engagement score is supposed to be to like know when you should be passing them to sales. By the time they're closing, sales should be involved. Maybe you have a deal score that's totally different,
right?
In most instances.
Yeah, and I think I love the reporting you get from letting this just run on its own, because if you have a bunch of deals closing when they're at 0, how are all these people, like, we're closing a bunch of deals that no one's ever even coming into our website on anymore. Like getting the data points from just letting it run is so much more insightful than like artificially forcing the data to be what you want it to be so that it matches with some expectation that you have.
Yeah. All right.
And that's like, if I could.
Yeah.
When you get in the habit of reviewing, like as it happens, like let's say that rep says, "Oh, I don't know about this." When they're doing that with everything and then realize they could just go to LinkedIn and ask about it or engage with the thing that just happened, like that's when you start to see like, oh, we don't have to wait 3 months to ask this burning question, right? We don't have to wait till 100 points of data come in and then bring it all in as a team and think we know everything. And instead, just like 1 or 2 hits from the market. This is what loop marketing is trying to help you do, by the way. Like, can tell you everything you need to know about what those signals actually mean. And probably, like, if they're good signals, like, probably advance the conversation, like, much faster than you've been able to in the past.
Any final thoughts?
No.
Start showing up every day, folks.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Today we covered when to trigger action, which takes into account recency and context, when scores are misleading with decays and false positives, or if something hasn't happened in a really long time, hasn't been updated. And then when to recalibrate, which is all the time, ideally. The big takeaway is time is the missing dimension in most scoring models. A score without time context is just a number, but the score that is recent, has recency, frequency, and consistency, that's actually helpful. Next week, we'll be wrapping things up with how, where it'll be a demo episode. We're going to synthesize everything we've built over the who, why, what, where, and when into actual implementation in HubSpot. If you have questions about timing, decays, triggers, drop them in the comments. We will see you next Monday. Yes.